Welcome to Dan's Talks. Today, my guest is Jerry Cohen, a prominent realtor and developer, I guess was a good word for it, who has been a longtime resident of Shelter Island. And I guess my first question about all this, Jerry, is what I've called the elephant in the room on Shelter Island, which is, what is it, 11 p.m. when the ferries end? When is the last ferry? You should know that.
Oh, the ferry to your land, which is over on the east end, is on the weekend, I think, 1:30.
Oh, that late?
Only from Greenport is it the North Ferry, 12 o'clock, midnight.
In the summer, so
I
gotta remember that.
Pretty well.
Is that something that is a big deal for people?
What do you mean by big deal?
Oh, like it's in their heads and they've got to remember that they can't be late? Something like that.
Well, then it's not in their head. No, I think after a while, it's actually salvation. If you miss it, you stay over in Greenport.
I see. How long have you been coming to Greenport, to Shelter Island?
Let's see now. We started visiting Shelter Island, and then we wound up with our first, which was my partner in business, and I bought the Deering Harbor Inn and converted it into a co-op, and we actually kept one of the units and started to really enjoy the island.
What do you like best about it?
Yeah, I think it's the beauty of it, the natural beauty.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the isolation from the mobs and crowds that take place even now in Greenport on a weekend. It's so busy, and as soon as you get on the ferry, you're very relaxed, and yet you're so close to the east or the north.
Tell me a little bit about your career, where you grew up, and how you got into development and real estate.
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and you can take the boy out of Brooklyn, but you can't take Brooklyn out of the boy. At a very young age, I moved. The family moved moved to Manhattan, because my father and mother had a dress shop on 14th Street, and we lived in an apartment house on 2nd Avenue and 11th Street, across the street from the historic St. Mark's Church. We had a park view over a cemetery, but it's a famous cemetery where Peter Stuyvesant was born. And I stayed there until I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. I went to public school through the 4th grade, and then we moved to Brooklyn. And I started school again in Brooklyn at public school 199.
And you went off to college, or did you go off to war? I remember you telling me about
I actually went off to high school. I skipped a lot, but not that much. I went to James Madison High School, which was where our former Justice of the Supreme Court, Mrs. Ginsburg, graduated.
And what did you do after that?
After that, I wound up deciding what to do about school. My parents told me I could go to whatever college I wanted to, as long as I could get there with a subway token. So I picked New York University, and I went in at a very young age, because while I was in Manhattan, I was skipping every year. which was a difficult situation because it's a little tough when you're in high school and you still haven't gotten your bar mitzvah. So anyway, I went into NYU just before my 16th birthday.
And after NYU, what happened then?
Well, I thought I would be an accountant because that seemed to be a very good profession. I worked after school at college at an accounting firm, and I just saw these men sitting behind the old calculators. There were no computers, and I said, I don't want to do that when I'm 40, 45. But I was called up by the reserves. I was in the 2nd Infantry Battalion combat team, and that was interesting. We had 8 weeks of basic training, and then I was so good, they put me into advanced infantry basic training. This was all at the end of the Korean War. It was almost over. And I thought when we were activated, we might be sent to Korea. And it didn't happen, but we got married, and it was a crazy thing to do, I guess, but we did it. And then we went to get our orders, and where was I sent to Iceland? And that was interesting. We were sent there to defend the base because Iceland was one of the largest Air Force bases that we had. When you look at the map, it's just right between what was the Soviet Union and England. Very strategic. And we were sent there to guard the base. So we had about a dozen B-52s stationed there. Always had 4 in the air. And we were there to defend the base, maybe the Russians, the Cold War, everything else. Everybody was threatening everybody. But by good fortune, flying, we had no jets. So I had to take 4 flights, and I was with an Air Force captain, and we were chatting. We were on the plane up and back for 4 different flights. And I didn't see him again until about a month after I got there. And by then I was out in the mud under a tent and in a bivouac, which was kind of like an adult scout camp. But it was tough. And one day I went into the library to look at a New York newspaper, even they were a couple of weeks old by the time they got there. And I met this lieutenant who I had met on the plane. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "What I'm doing, I have a day off. So I'm just going to stay on base and go maybe to a movie. Maybe get 1 movie every month. So if you wanted to go to movies, you can only really go once a week or once a month." Anyway, I told him that I'm an infantryman defending him. Well, anyway, he said, we have 9 men at the base publication office. Did you ever have any newspaper experience? I said, well, I reported for the old New York Sun, which was a paper no longer in existence, on all the Brooklyn High School games. And I was on the newspaper in college. He says, "Can you type?" Oh, of course I can type. That was my MOS. I had a clerk typist MOS. He said, well, I'm going to see if I can do anything. Maybe I can get 1 Army person included. I have an okay to go to 10 people. I said, "Oh, that would be great." Well, I forgot about it for a few days, and then one day I get a call from my master sergeant, and he says, "I want you to meet me at the commanders of the Army battalion at his tent." I said, "Oh, well, gosh, what did I do?" He said, I don't know. I was just told to bring you right over there." So he looks at me, and I was a specialist too, like a corporal at that time. And the commander, who was a captain, said, Specialist Cohen, we're a little upset. You never told us you had writing newspaper experience." I said, "Well, nobody here asked me." He says, "We have nobody at the base newspaper. Nobody even knows we're here. And we're defending everybody, but nobody knows it. I want you to, you've just been requested to go to headquarters company, and they'll tell you what they're going to want you to do." Well, you never saw anybody pack so fast. And I was there that night, and all of a sudden, I find it's not bad. They're making fresh donuts in the morning, and they're doing things almost like officers, not quite, but a lot different than the tent schedule. I started talking to a few of the people there who were in my office, and several were married, and they said they have their wives with them up there, and they live off base in a little town called Keflavik, which I said, "Really?" So they took me one day, a little village, and they had, small homes, and people rented out rooms. Well, I had written letters back home to tell Adrian, and of course her parents read them, that I always wondered where the end of the world was, but I got here. I don't know how long I'll be able to stay here. This is 24 hours of darkness in the winter for 3 months, and the midnight sun for 3 months in the summer.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden I say, "I have you a job lined up, and it's a good job, but you have to come right here because they're going to fill it soon." Of course, my in-laws and were not delighted about that. We had been married all of about, I don't know, 4 months or something like that. 1 month, excuse me, 4 weeks. And it was also, she had to take 3 flights. And when she arrived, I took her right over to the civil service where they hired people from the States, and she got a huge job as the assistant to the base officer for finance. I think they made out all the paychecks, and she was hired right away. And then we had to find a place to live, which we found, which was a 1 room with shades. But it was a place to stay, and we lived off base.
How long did you live there?
Well, of the homes?
Yeah.
Oh, the homes, it was a little village. They were a lot.
No. How many months did you stay in Iceland?
Oh, in Iceland? It was 1 year. It was a 1 year assignment.
After that, did you leave the service and go into business somehow?
Well, what I did was I had finished my points for an MBA at NYU before I got called up, and I hadn't done my thesis. So I had to get my thesis done within a year, and I kind of struggled at and delayed because by that time I had decided I don't want to be an accountant, because I took a course at NYU with a professor named John White, and he was my inspiration. I wanted to be him. He made the real estate industries. We went on field trips and saw buildings under construction. That was the beginning of the new construction boom in residential and commercial. But they didn't hire anyone that didn't have experience. So I went up to his office and I said, look, how can anyone have experience if they can't get hired? He said, well, we don't pay much, you know. I said, look, I'm willing to learn. And I think I was paid about $75 a week, as opposed to a starting salary that would have been about $200 at the accounting firm, which I would have accepted in. But the week before I came over there, the head of the commercial real estate took about 12 of the brokers that were there with them and left the company, which was Brown Harris Stevens, and formed his own company. So this young fellow from Columbia and myself, we were the only ones in leasing, with one older man. And we said, what do we do now? And well, we'll take you through a training program. We worked in the appraisal department. We worked in the management department, because real estate has a lot of facets. And we started getting very creative. We were not a big firm in office leasing, but we managed a lot of property for big corporations. We had an excellent management department. But we had the idea that they were going to build Grand Central City, which was going to be this huge building of almost 2 million square feet. They couldn't get started until they had their first tenant. And we put out a campaign. We went to the developer and said, I know you're not going to give anybody an exclusive, but we'd like to be authorized to offer the property to you. So the first thing we did, we made up these kind of one-page photos of the projected building and wrote, we have been authorized by the developer to offer the new, Grand Central City.
This was what today is
It was the Pan Am building. It's now the MetLife building.
Yes, this is one of the largest skyscrapers in Manhattan.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
we sent them out, and believe it or not, we got 12 serious responses, because we sent it out to all the people at 230 Park, which all the tower floors would be blocked by this building. Instead of looking at all of Manhattan, they'd be looking at a building across the street. So we told them that. And we actually closed almost every one of those deals, except they were all contingent upon the developer getting financing, which you can't get without a major tenant. And the reason nobody else really worked on that building, because they're not going to work on a building that may never be built. we could afford taking the risk. So we get a call one day, Friday, to come over to the developer's office. And I said, gee, what did we do? Did we do something wrong? He said, I want to let you know, but I don't want anybody else to know. I signed the lease this morning with Pan Am, who are taking the whole base of the building. They're moving all their offices here, and the ground floor will be their ticket office. And it became known as the Pan Am building, if you remember. And there we were.
How old were you then?
I was 24, 25, and very experienced.
Did you get an exclusive to rent there?
No. We just were authorized to offer it to them. And, so the people had signed these letters of intent, which were really pretty well negotiated, as if it were a lease. And they all were activated if by a certain date the owner got his financing, which happened. So we grew our staff. We were running the leasing department at 25, which was basically an old, we used to call white shoe residential real estate firm. And one day I get a call from a developer from Fisher Brothers, Larry Fisher. And by then, Irwin Wilson, the developer of 200 Park Avenue, had appointed Cushman and Wakefield to be their exclusive agent, because they had to rent 1.5 million feet. And I went to Larry Fisher's office, and he said, "I hear you're a hotshot kid." I said, "Well, I've been called better. I've been called worse." And he said, Leon Peters, who was the head of Cushman Wakefield, said, "Yeah, there's one young guy that's making a lot of these deals. I don't know how he's doing it, but you want to meet him, because he'll hustle for you." And sure enough, the Fisher brother gave us this agency on a 1 million-foot building. By then I had matured. I was almost 26. Been,
I remember you were
and
considered at that time as one of the major, I met you later than that, and you were
yeah,
considered one of the major real estate dealers in the city.
well, by then I was ready to leave, because we had my partner Ian Brantley and John White, who was the teacher, who was one of the best appraisers in New York, and a few others, put together a deal when I was 28 to buy the company and to spread the payments out over several years to the 3 original owners of the company. Anyway, it went pretty smooth, the negotiations, except a week before the closing. The partner that handled negotiations with me and my partner and one other person from the firm said, "We've gotten another offer." I said, "What offer?" He said, "Well, we've got an offer which was the same as yours was, except they're going to pay cash." Where we had gone to the bank to take out loans and everything else, I said, "How can you do that? We don't have access to all that cash." I said, "Well, what does Harry Hemsley need this for? Small potatoes compared to Hemsley Spear." And that was it. We were really upset, because it was the old partners who were looking to cash out and wanted to sell, and approached us first. Well, I made one of the first probable mistakes. I quit. And I quit before knowing where the heck I was going. And then I said, "Gosh, I don't want to go to another big firm and have all these politics." I was so fed up. I think we ought to go in business for ourselves. And someone who is unique in the business, Joseph Bernstein, always captivated he was a one-man office, and yet made about 20% of the major deals. And I could never figure what was his secret. So my partner and I went over there, and we saw his secret was hard work. He worked 24/7, and it taught us a lot. I got quite an education. But
what were some of the major projects people might remember that you've been part of?
Well, once I guess the major ones that we did in the Pan Am building when we really started, and then the next big one was when we got the agency of that Fisher Brothers building, where we got it rented, finally, the building, to Burroughs and other good tenants. And we were representing Blue Cross at that time. But this is already after we parted company with Joe, and he said, "Wait until you get a real good, because I told him I thought I liked a larger operation and whatever. So he said, wait until you get hired and what went on. So we were approached by someone, and it was an old line company called William A. White and Sons, which was a much larger than where we were at Brown Harris Stevens. And we wound up making a deal with Lou Smadbeck, who had bought a third of the company, and we bought the other 2/3, my partner and I. And that was probably the best thing I ever did, because John White became my partner. He came with us, but he was very influential in having me get to where I was. And then some of the biggest deals were during a bad time in the office market, which was as difficult now as it was in those days. The Tishman Company had completed 2 big, over 1 million square foot buildings, and they were empty. So I was representing Blue Cross, who would only own, and they consolidated from 3 locations, and they had a consultant, and I suggested the building at 622 3rd Avenue, which we actually wound up selling to Blue Cross, who occupied the whole
How
building.
many square feet was that?
It was about around 1 million feet, yeah.
Did you ever, I have to interrupt you because we're going to be running short of time, but so were you ever involved in any real estate transactions out here in the eastern end of Long Island?
Yeah, we bought the old Deering Harbor Inn.
Yeah.
And, we had it, and but never really. And then we made it into a co-op. And after we sold our big home on Shelter Island, we wound up renting one of the villas that we used to own by coincidence, which had all been fixed up. So it was ironic, but no, I never did any.
But you became,
I did office buildings.
You and Adrian became major sponsors and donators to Bay Street.
Well, Adrian and I loved it, and it was struggling like a lot of other nonprofits, but they had a magic there because they had some wonderful people. But the problem was, how do you get people to go during the week in really a vacation spot? And Adrian, went on the board, and we were very active there, and helped keep it alive over the bad years. And that was great. And the other great thing I think we did in Sag Harbor was we got involved in the Temple on Israel. And of course, that was just completely redone. And that was really initiated by a major gift from Ronald Lauder, which was a matching gift. And that was just completed this season, and was still very active in both organizations and others.
Well, thank you for the time. We've run through it, and thank you for being on the podcast. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.